If you have access to a gimbal or professional camera, ideally even with the Zhiyun Weebill 3S or the Canon 850D, the processes here you'll be able to implement pretty much with any gimbal setup, and this will work especially if you're a beginner. So keep watching as I will discuss and walk you through the process of setting up the gimbal and the camera together, and then we will put it through our paces by getting out there and showing you how you can record video if it's your first time creating content. When you've gathered up all of the pieces that you need, you then need to start putting them all together. So the first thing to do is to put the brackets on the camera itself that you see here. Make sure to use the Allen key that comes provided with it and just tighten everything up. The next stage then will be to start building out the gimbal. So you want to put the handles and even the tripod on it. So to have the extension handle, you want to make sure that you put it in the slider and lock it in place. And from there then you can screw in the tripod handle extension, as this is a must for what you'll be using later on. Once you have that part set up, the gimbal will have locking points for the arms that you'll need to unlock in order to start putting all the pieces together. So you'll see the switches at different points, which I even have pointed out here. And from there, you're going to place the camera on the gimbal once you have all of the arms set up. Now ideally you want to lock the bottom two arms and only work with one arm individually, especially when you're trying to balance the camera in the beginning, as you'll have to balance each arm separately, as you can see here, as I'm currently balancing the top arm. So you want to make sure that the camera is able to move freely without it just flopping on its front or side. It will take quite a few attempts, as you'll have to keep unlocking the lock point of each of the arms and just adjusting the camera ever so slightly until you've gotten to the point that the camera is able to move and hold its own weight without it constantly flopping around. When I was doing this originally, I spent a couple of weeks just literally dismantling and putting the gimbal functions back together enough times just so that I could memorize it enough so that I could do it without even thinking about it. The next stage will be to balance the gimbal. Once you power the gimbal on through the power button, you'll have to hold it down for about 3 seconds. The scroll wheel at the side of the gimbal, you'll have to push it inward then to be able to select through the menus, because you'll need to auto balance the gimbal or auto calibrate it. And as you can see, it'll shake to let you know when everything is working. But if you're wanting to shoot in a different format, like if you're wanting to readjust the camera to use, like say for short form content, you'll have to turn the camera on its side like you can see here, but you'll have to go through the balancing process again. And the same will be if you're deciding to add the likes of microphones, either if you're adding a wired mic like you can see on screen here, or even like a wireless mic. You will still need to implement those processes every time you add more weight to the camera. Now just bear in mind that there is a certain limit to what the gimbal can hold, because you don't want to overtax the motor on the machine itself. But with practice, this process will become a lot easier. So if you're using wireless mics, you also want to make sure that they're paired up and connected properly to the camera. And you can use the cold shoe mount on the top of the camera if there is one there, and then you can place the receiver on the top of the camera itself. Okay, so with everything set up, what you want to do is you want to ensure that the camera is in manual mode. So you click where it says the M, and then you can come back onto the screen. You want to click on the menu button on the camera itself. It'll bring up this menu. You click on it, and where it says sound recording auto, you just want to click OK, and it will bring up the specific features and parameters. So as you can see here, I'm speaking into the mic and you can hear the decibel levels moving around, so that's letting you know that everything is pretty much working okay. Again, you don't want it to be too high or too low, so you will have to adjust the settings and make sure that the decibel level is -12 on the wireless microphone itself on the receiver. So once you're happy enough with the settings, the best thing to do is just put it to the test. So let's get out there and record. For a long time, I was looking at avenues of trying to figure out how to set up a gimbal, and even with a specific setup such as this. And not too long ago I found myself on YouTube trying to figure out what to do and looking for specific tutorials around how to implement all of these processes, especially with this camera and gimbal setup. But there was very few references about it online. But the one thing I have learned in recent times is that when you learn to set up one gimbal, you can pretty much set up any gimbal. So I'm just hoping that by creating this video here that you'll get something from it, especially if you're just starting out like I was. Another point that I want to add is that with the camera settings themselves, while I didn't briefly mention it earlier on, is that I just kept everything pretty much in the auto mode, because when you're starting out like I was, and I'm sure you're in the same frame, you don't really need to worry about all of the proper settings or features. Just a simple auto feature will be pretty much enough to balance out everything, so you don't need to worry about your shutter speed, ISO and all that. That will come at a later date, trust me, it will. But if you're just getting started, which is the focus of this video, having the simplest settings set up possible is all you need to literally just hit that record button and just get started. So when you do get out there and you start recording, like you can see here, it's a simple case of breaking down all of the shots into small clips. So I might only record maybe 5, 10, maybe 15 or 20 second clips max, as it's easier to edit with later on. Now it does help if the weather's fairly decent and there's decent enough light. It does make everything look a lot smoother than you would think, and it does come out on the camera. Now I was luckily enough on this particular day when I was out recording with this setup that I had a bit of help, so I had someone else helping me record while I did have also a chest piece attached to kind of give you an idea of what I was really doing. And the moves in question that I was using were just simple push and pull and pan moves and so forth, even just walking, because at the time when I was recording this, even for myself, I was learning a lot of these processes and I was just trying to get familiar with basic movements and even just utilising the likes of the ninja walk and all of those type of elements, because they are something that you will have to use and implement once you get more familiar with using all of your camera gear and features. Things will become easier in time, I find. You just have to keep at it, work at it pretty much every day or as long as you need to until you get familiar and comfortable with it. But at the same time, don't think for a second that that's going to be enough, because there's always something new to learn. I still find myself even today always looking and referencing other videos on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I'm always looking for ideas of the best camera setups, the best modes, the best settings and features to use, and even just the best movements or shot elements to make my life a lot easier when I am out recording videos or footage. Even to a point that I'm even now getting into the habit of creating my own like shot lists that I will have pretty much there that I'll always reference or reuse over and over again, because they really are so effective, and if done right, they'll make your shots look a lot more professional and engaging. But again, it does take time to implement all of these elements. It's just practice, that's all. Another thing I will point out though is that with the use of a gimbal like this, while it might look small when it's all in its original format, but when you set everything up, and believe me, when you're carrying it around for an hour or two throughout the day, your arms will be wrecked. Let's just put it this way, if you're used to going to the gym and lifting weights, that's going to come in handy for you. Believe me, it will, because your arms will get very, very tired from lifting that gimbal for those long periods, trust me. But it's still worth doing. But as you can see here, all I'm doing is just doing simple movements. I'm transitioning the camera to kind of show you a reflection of kind of what I'm doing in the moment, and I'm just rinsing and repeating throughout as much as I can. So I find that the best way to learn is to put yourself in awkward or uncomfortable situations, regardless if there's people around. Yes, you might be worried about what people are thinking, but from my own experience, especially when I first started doing this only a couple of years ago, you quickly learn that people don't really care at all. They're just too busy doing their own thing. I will say though, when I did rock up that day, when I had all of that gear and set up, people thought I was part of a TV crew, so everybody was coming over and asking me what I was doing and if I was working for someone or what exactly I was doing. Believe it or not, I'd never gotten so much attention holding a camera in my life until that day. But through doing that, if anything, I got to know a lot more people. It's some really cool and really interesting conversations with other car owners. You got to learn about their interest in cars, what drew them to the cars that they currently own, and if anything, they were asking me my opinions on what I thought of the camera setup up on even how I'm doing what I'm doing, because a lot of people are even also interested in learning the same things. And I still even find that regularly today when I do go to car shows, if I have the camera about, which you will see in future videos, I do regularly get asked about the cameras I'm using, where did I get it, or a familiar camera that I do have, they'll be like, oh, I've seen that and I've been interested in buying it, is it any good? So you'll always get those questions. So the truth is you don't actually have to be an expert in that particular area to be able to explain what you're doing. For me, it's a process of learning, as it will be for you, but at the same time, because I'm also doing this for work, for my job, my day job, so I'm always looking for avenues and ways in order to learn new processes to make my work life a lot easier when I am out doing certain tasks or jobs for people. So by going to car shows does allow me to do that, but it also helps to build my confidence in myself. I learn how to better interact with people in different scenarios or situations, and you learn to care less about what people are thinking, because everybody, like I said, is doing their own thing. Because you will always have those doubts, thinking to yourself, oh, what if? But you'll find that when you get out there and start recording and feeling uncomfortable, you'll realise that it's not so bad. After a few minutes you'll realise, you know what, I'm actually enjoying this and I love doing this, and I do a lot of this in my own time as well, so for me it's a no-brainer. Even with recording with this gimbal, after a certain point the battery did die out, so I had to rely on my extra camera that I had with me, which is my Canon G7X Mark II, which is one of the first original cameras that I bought and that I started creating videos with, and it massively helped me with getting over those hurdles. So moving on to the gimbals and all of these setups was a natural progression along that line. So if you don't currently have a gimbal or camera of high quality, your mobile phone or anything that you have there will be more than useful for you, and then you can naturally evolve over time. Just start small and just break it down into small steps. It's like when you're making these videos, like I said, I like to break everything down into smaller clips. Just do the same, and if it takes you a couple of days or even a couple of weeks to put everything together in the beginning, don't worry about it. Don't be too hard on yourself. All of these processes and elements do take time to understand. You're not going to be a genius with it overnight, and like I said, I had people coming up to me when I was really only starting out, because they see me with a camera, they were automatically like, oh, this guy obviously is a professional. I'm like, no, I'm not a professional. At the time I'm like, no, I'm just still learning like everything else, but I'm just making sure that I put myself out there to learn these things, and that's the only way to do it. That's the best way to do it, is to learn by doing, because if you don't try you'll never know. And the truth is, it's not like I'm young. I'm in my 40s now as of recording this video, and the reality is if I'm willing to do this at my age, there's no reason why anybody else can't do it. You're only limited by your imagination, and realistically you're the only one holding yourself back from doing what you truly want to do. And in time you never know what it can bring for you. That's the crazy thing about all this. You never know what doors or avenues will open up for you. Even as a result of me doing stuff like this, it has opened up opportunities for me personally, and I know myself now I'm at a place where I feel like it can open more, and it will in the future. So if I can do this, truthfully anybody can do it. The only one holding yourself back is you, and if you keep making excuses, nothing will ever happen. So all I'm going to say is just get out there and make something happen. If you have a camera, if you have a phone, if you have a setup like I had here, there's no reason why not to use it. Go to car shows, do all of these things in your spare time or in your free time. Give yourself a reason to get out there and start doing these things. You'll be amazed at what you'll be able to do after a couple of weeks of just practice. And like I said, when people see you with cameras, they're naturally curious, because people will come over to you and they will ask you questions, and it will help to bring you out of yourself. You will start to build network and build more connection with people, and like I said, it will open more doors for you in time. So you've got nothing to lose at the end of the day. So if you found this to be helpful, make sure to stick around, because I will be providing a lot more insights and even tips, guides, tutorials in future videos where I'll be documenting my journey, but I'll also be trying to help you also try to achieve similar results if you're just starting out, as that is the goal here. So yeah, no time like the present. Just go out there, take your camera with you, set up the scene, or even go to a car show, do whatever you need to, and just hit that record button and just go from there.